How's you going, boys? Mike here. Welcome back to Grampie's workshop. We have a project today, a little bit of woodworking involved, but mainly it's for the tractor. I have a landscape rake attachment for my tractor, and I store that landscape rake on some scaffolding that I have set up in the temporary shelter. It's always an issue to get that landscape rake up there because I have to sling it off the end of my bucket, and the bucket, you know, can only go so high, and the landscape rake is kind of gangly, and the center of balance is kind of weird on it. It's always a struggle for me anyways to get this landscape rake, you know, perched up there on this platform. So the project that we're up to today is I'm going to make kind of like a half pallet base to be able to set the landscape rake on this base, and then I can put my forks on my bucket and then just go pick up this kind of half pallet that I'm going to make and be able to lift the landscape rake a lot better that way to set it on the platform of the scaffolding in the temporary shelter. So let's get at her and have a look and see how we make out making this. I'm not sure if it's going to work or not, but we'll soon find out. So there's my landscape rake right here, right? I've just taken it off the tractor. What I did was, before I disconnected from the tractor, I swung the rake part around underneath the mount of it so it would be more compact. And when I disconnected from the tractor, you see it just naturally sort of sits this way. Well, that was always a problem for me. Now, how do I lift this up when I'm slinging it off the front of the tractor? It was always an adventure. So I'm thinking what I'm going to do is build a little pallet, half a pallet, that will go underneath it. Then the rake will just sit on it, and then I can scoop up the pallet when I put the forks on the tractor and put it on the storage rack in the temporary shelter. Alright, sorry about the lighting in here, it's kind of dark, but inside the temporary shelter there's the scaffolding that I have, and I use that scaffolding, you know, like for jobs like painting the barn and camp and whatnot. But most times it's just sitting around doing nothing, so I thought I'd use it for storage. So underneath it here I have my box blade. So then on this platform is where I want to load the landscape rake. And as you can see, there's not a lot of clearance above it here. So what happens is I end up, well, look, if you look right close, I don't know whether you can see it or not, but on that bar right there is a big dink, because when I lift the bucket up on when I lift the landscape rake, when it's slung on the bucket, I always struggle with the clearance and trying to balance it, and that tape on the back there in the back wall, that's where I misbalanced it once, and the landscape rake fell off the far side of the scaffolding. Put a hole in my wall, but anyway, I got that taped up, worked okay last winter. So that's what we're up to. I'm going to build a little pallet deck or something to set the landscape rake on the way it's configured out there by the tractor. Okay, so I'm laying out my pallet here. I have some scrap pieces of 4x4, of course. I'm going to use those as the sleepers here. And then I had some scrap hemlock left from another project as well. So I'm going to use those as the bed of it. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that I have at least, I measured and calculated 43 inches to the outside of these sleepers so that my forks can slide in here. So I measure this and I get that at 43 and a bit. So that's 10.5 on that end, 10.5 on that end. Alright. Okay, so with that back piece on, I just flipped it around here to put this front piece, and then I can space the other boards equally in the field. So I'm just checking it again here for square. This has to be 10.5. That's what it is, so I'll take that right quick. Alright, so now I have the rest of these boards. I'm just going to place them here. Alright, I'm not sure if you can see, but I put an end stop on here so I can just bring my boards up to that to make them all overhang the same distance. Just makes it easier to line them up, quicker that way. So now I'm going to put these boards on, just space them. They don't have to be exact, just as long as there's a gap between them. Something like that. So that wouldn't look too bad from the space shuttle, would it? couple of screws in each board. Okay, so that's my little pallet rack. Now, one thing that I want to do, when I set this on, I want to make sure that it's as stable as can be. So the forks of the rake are going to be on this end of the board here, or what the other, doesn't matter. But and I don't want them to slip off, because if they slip off, the rake will fall down flat, and then the weight of the hitch part of the rake will make it topple forward. So I'm just going to put a little strip of something along here, maybe a couple of different places, just to hold the fingers of the rake, I mean. So we got the pallet lifted up on the forks, and I see that I jigged the rake up against my little block, but when I lifted it, the rake moved forward and the tines fell in between the boards, so that might work even better. So I took my ratchet strap, I just looped it around that board and hooked it, and then around the other end, and then tied it back like that. That's not on there very good, but what I'm going to do is get some proper D-clips and screw those to those deck boards and then secure it. But that should hold her good for now. Let's try to rock it. I don't think she's going to go anywhere. Alright, we'll go try and put her in on the scaffolding now. So as I was picking up my my rake on the forks, started to move it, I was thinking, uh-oh, you know, the forks, my forks are only 20 inches long, the pallet is 29 inches deep, so I don't have a whole, and there's a lot of weight on the far end of the pallet. Maybe, you know, with the hydraulics bumping and moving quick and stopping quick, it might tip forward. So what I did was I took another ratchet strap, I hooked it here on the chain for the top link and down around the anchors on the bucket to hold that pallet. Now I never took any strain on it, but just to hold it to keep it from tipping forward. So I think that'll be a lot better. Now let's try and get her on the rack right there. Well, it didn't go as smooth as silk, that's for sure. The forks in the bucket, I have to say they're a good idea, but they're not real safe. Okay, you have to be always on the guard of what's going to happen with these forks. I can't see the tips of them too good, or actually can't even hardly see the forks too good from the cab. So you have to keep watching and checking and double checking and making sure, you know, and you can't see the back end here to see that the pallet was on the rack all the way. But anyway, we managed it with a little bit of care and concern. And also, tying this off to the bucket was a great idea to keep it from tipping forward and falling off the forks. But having said that, you also have to remember, after you load her on the pallet and start, or on the scaffold and start to back away, you have to unhook your safety strap. We got the rack built. I think it's going to work a lot better. Even with all the care and concern I was taking and the pucker factor of this whole job, still a lot easier than trying to sling that off there with a piece of chain on the front of the bucket. That was just a nightmare from start to finish. A couple more tries on this though, I think I'll get it pretty good, and I can even put some alignment marks here to know exactly where I am in the process, when I'm in the process of loading this pallet on the scaffold. So I think this is going to be a good idea. I think it's going to work good. Alright, so we made that little pallet for the landscape rake. I think it's going to work good, make it a lot easier to put the rake on the scaffold there in the shelter. But you know, as I was showing and demonstrating in that video, it's not the easiest thing to do. It's not the safest thing to do, I guess, because unsafe things are usually easier than safe things. So you have to be careful. It's still a gangly piece of gear, and it tips easy, and well, the forks don't move on the bucket just quite like normal forks would. Like, you have to keep leveling your load as you raise it up. It's not a self-leveling bucket, and you have to be careful when you're raising it up that it doesn't tip back on you, or if you level your forks that it doesn't fall off the front. So, you know, a lot of little pitfalls you got to stick handle around, but hey, we got her on there and I think it's going to work good. So thanks for watching. Put some comments down below, let me know just how dangerous you thought this was, or if you thought it was a good idea. Either way, it's going to work for me. So stay safe everyone, have a great day, thanks for tuning in. To anyone new here, welcome. To all my regular viewers, thanks very much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it all. So take care everyone, we'll talk to you soon.